Hello there, Dragonfire here, and I want to hop on and talk about Van Halen. Van Halen's an interesting band for me. As I've been going through and collecting CDs, sometimes I just happen to come across a Van Halen record here or there, and somewhat on name recognition, I'm like, yeah, I like the band Van Halen. I'm going to go ahead and get this record when I come across one at a cheap price. And before I knew it, I had almost all their records, and I'm like, man, I feel like I should just collect them all at this point. Um, so I did. Yeah, that's basically, so let's talk about Van Halen's discography. Let's start off with Van Halen 1. I think my favorites on here, I do like the guitar solo of Eruption. You Really Got Me, I think, is a cover, but it's a fun one. It's a good one. Um, Jamie's Crying. Yeah, there's some pretty good stuff on here. Um, Kicking off now, you have David Lee Roth there, the original lead singer. Um, and this album came out in '78. And this lineup would be the same lineup throughout the remainder of the '70s and into the mid '80s. There's Eddie Van Halen and his brother Alex on the drums. There um, is the Van Halen brothers, Eddie and Alex, who the band is named after, of course. And then you have Michael Anthony on guitar. So those are the four original members of Van Halen. Or if not the original, you could say at least the classic lineup. I don't know if they had other members in the band before they became famous, but the classic lineup of Van Halen. But the lineup that appears on their first album. Um, yeah, it's pretty good album. Van Halen 1. Van Halen 2 is a lot weaker, in my opinion. I thought Dance the Night Away was okay on this one. Um, yeah, Beautiful Girls. Yeah, definitely a weaker album in my opinion, but pretty cool nonetheless. Did I show the backside of Van Halen 1? There we go. So, front and back of Van Halen 1, front and back of Van Halen 2. Right. Their third album, now I believe the first album was '78, second album was '79, third album is 1980. Um, uh, and The Cradle Will Rock, I like that one. Let's see. Yeah, overall, this is a pretty decent album. Could This Be Magic is another one that I kind of like. I just like the overall feel of this album. I can listen to it from beginning to end, and it's pretty good. I think Could This Be Magic is the one that has the line Women and Children First, which is the title of the third album, Women and Children First. So it's kind of sort of, I guess you could say, the title track, since it's the one that has the lyric that became the title of the album. But yeah, yeah, it's not a bad listen to from beginning to end. Um, this one now, I believe, is 1981. So we've had 78, 79, 80, and now 81. Um, and it's Fair Warning. So it's their fourth album. This one again, to me at least, feels a little bit weaker than the other two. It's weaker. Like Van Halen 2 is weaker, whereas I feel Van Halen 1 and Women and Children First are pretty strong. This, to me at least, Fair Warning is a little bit weaker. Um, I like Dirty Movies. Um, that's the title of one of the tracks on here, probably the one that stands out the most to me in my mind. Going back up to a stronger album now, I believe this is 82, so we've had an album every year so far. Um, 78 to 82, and this is Diver Down. I like this one. I like their cover of Pretty Woman. Of course, the great Roy Orbison song. Everybody knows Roy Orbison's song, Pretty Woman. They do a nice cover here. I like Happy Trails. I believe Happy Trails, is that a Willie Nelson song? I think it might be a Willie Nelson song. Or maybe Gene Autry. Is it Gene Autry? Yeah, Happy Trails to You. Yeah, I think it's Gene Autry now that I think about it. Not Willie Nelson, Gene Autry. Um, I like Big Bad Bill. That's a pretty cool song. I don't as much care for their Dancing in the Street, which is a cover. I don't think they really do a great job with it. I mean, it's all right, but I don't know. Anyway, it's got some good stuff on Diver Down. And then I think, like I said, I think that's 1982. And then I think for the first time they skip a year. I don't think they put out an album in 83. I think their next album is, yeah, like I said, I think it's just 78 Van Halen 1, 72 or 79 Van Halen 2, 80 is Women and Children First, 81 Fair Warning, and 82 Diver Down. They skip 83 and then 1984 come out with the album 1984, sometimes also known as MCMLXXXIV, which are Roman numerals for 1984. Um, yeah, I do like this album. I do think that Jump and Panama are a little overrated. I do like the songs to an extent, but I don't like them as much as I feel like they get overhyped and overplayed. Um, some of the other songs on here to me are better. Top Jimmy is a song that you never hear played on the radio. I think it's better, then it deserves better. But definitely, this one has my all-time favorite, just absolutely all-time favorite Van Halen song. To me, it's far and away the best song. It's a five-star song, and that is Hot for Teacher. Hot for Teacher to me is the best Van Halen song. It's got a fantastic music video. It's just a great song. Hot for Teacher is my number one all-time favorite Van Halen song. Almost that song alone elevates probably 1984 is probably my favorite Van Halen album. Um, then we move out after everybody probably already knows, but David Lee Roth left the band, did a solo career, and they got another artist who already had fronted another band and had a solo career of his own, that being Sammy Hagar. And so then begins the Sammy Hagar era of the band. And um, uh, starts out with 5150 on this one. Why Can't It Be Love was a big radio hit. It's a pretty good song. Um, Best of Both Worlds stands out in my mind, which would later be the title of one of their one version of their greatest hits, which I do have that one. I didn't get it out, but I do have Best of Both Worlds by Van Halen Greatest Hits, which has tracks from both the David Lee Roth era of the band as well as the Sammy Hagar era of the band, and just putting together all their greatest hits. Um, yeah, you know, pretty decent album. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's decent. And uh, OU 812, or I've also heard people pronounce it OU 812, however you want to pronounce it. This one's it's interesting. It uh, you know, I don't know that there's any one particular track, maybe When It's Love. I think that was the big hit off of this album. It probably just stands out in my mind because I've heard it on the radio so much. But yeah, yeah, it's not bad. It's not my favorite, but okay. Then for Unlawful Cardinal Knowledge, the title of this album is a bit of a joke. And by the way, I think I forgot to give the years, but for the Sammy Hagar era, but I think 5150, I believe, comes out in '86. Um, OU 812 is about '88 or '89, somewhere in there. And for Unlawful Cardinal Knowledge, I believe is either 90 or 91. So kind of the OU 812 is the last album of the '80s, but really the hair metal craze kind of went on until about into the early '90s, 90, 91, 92, before it really started to lose steam. So this is probably the last album of kind of the hair metal era, which you could argue that Van Halen was the first to really started to kick it off with their first album, Van Halen 1, their self-titled album, Van Halen, whatever you want to call it. Um, and again, this album is all right. Um, again, this is probably the last album that they made where you could still get away with making a hair metal album, which I would argue Van Halen is a hair metal band. Um, so yeah, Pound Cake. I don't know. Maybe the one that stands out to me on this one, the first track on the album. Oh, by the way, yeah, I was saying it was a joke. The album title, in case you never got it before, but the take the first letter of each word for Unlawful Cardinal Knowledge is, first you have an F, then the next word starts with a U, then the next word starts with a C, the last word starts with a K, you know. So, um, okay, then we have the final album of the Sammy Hagar era with Balance. I believe this one came out in '97. Um, and it's an okay album. It's fine. Like I said, the hair metal era was over at this time, and so many bands didn't know what to do with themselves. Do they hang on to their old sound? Do they adjust to the new sound? Do they meet somewhere in the middle? And um, Can't Stop Loving You is the big hit off of this album. I think that was the biggest hit off this album. Yeah, it's an alright song. But I most bands I think after about like '92 might have been the last great year of great albums coming out from hair metal bands. After that, I think they all struggled and to a greater or lesser extent failed to put out some really good albums after that. Um, So they came back, I believe this is around 2009 with Van Halen 3. Sammy Hagar had left the band at this point. They got Gary Cherone to come in and be the lead singer. Um, I like Gary Cherone. He had been the lead singer of the band Extreme before coming to Van Halen. And Extreme is a very underrated hair metal band, in my opinion. Um, but I don't know, like, for whatever reason, um, this album doesn't do it for me. And yeah, trying to think, is there anything from this album that I like, any songs that stand out to me? And not really. I remember listening to this album just recently. I listened to all of the Van Halen albums in order, and this is the second to last one, and nothing really stands out in my mind about the album. So, and I like the band Extreme, but for whatever reason, when he joined Van Halen, Gary Sharon just didn't work. Maybe it was the songwriting, maybe it was the whatever, but it just didn't work. Now, in 2012, the band got back together for their final album. Um, for whatever uh, you know reason, it was like Wolfgang Van Halen, the son of Eddie and nephew of Alex, who um, who kind of put this together. Um, I guess it was Wolfgang's idea to get the band back together, um, and put out a new album. So he actually took Michael Anthony's spot. Um, and so it's Wolfgang Van Halen playing bass guitar, while Eddie Van Halen plays lead guitar. But Wolfgang plays instead of Michael Anthony on this album. But you still have Alex on the drums, Alex Van Halen on the drums. So I guess you could say this is the most Van Halen of any Van Halen album because it has three Van Halens playing on it: Eddie, Alex, and Wolfgang, right? Um, and they bring back the original lead singer, David Lee Roth, for this album. So it's not Gary Cherone again. It's not bringing back Sammy Hagar. Instead, it's David Lee Roth made one final album with Van Halen, and it's a different kind of truth. Um, yeah. Um, I think they released Tattoo as a single for this, and they really shouldn't have done that because it's probably the worst song on the album. I don't know why it was released as a single. I don't think it did anything. I don't think it charted at all, really. But um, it's an enjoyable listen from beginning to end. I'm not sure that any song really stands out as being particularly great. It's just one that you can listen to, and it's like, oh yeah, yeah, that was fine. Um, so anyway, yeah, that's a different kind of truth. Now I can do my Van Halen related side stuff. I only have one of David Lee Roth's solo albums. I wouldn't mind getting a few more, but I think this is the first solo album after leaving Van Halen. So this is Eat 'Em and Smile by David Lee Roth. So his solo album. Now, I mentioned Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar did stuff with other bands and also solo albums both before and after being in Van Halen. Maybe I think he might even put out a solo album while he was in the band. But anyway, I do have this one, his self-titled album, self-titled Sammy Hagar album. Um, uh, I don't know that necessarily any particular track on this album stands out to me. I think it's also released under a different title as well. Sometimes it's not called the self-titled album, but whatever. But it's nice. There's no standout tracks. I forgot to do a standout track for David Lee Roth's album here, Even the Smile. Um, I don't know. Maybe Yankee Rose. I've got to probably give this album another listen. Um, anyway, yeah, I probably need to give this album, Sammy Hagar's self-titled album, another listen again. Now, I also have another Sammy Hagar one here. I think I like Sammy Hagar's solo work better than I like his era during Van Halen. Um, I really love the song here, Heavy Metal, which was the theme song for the movie Heavy Metal. It's probably my favorite Sammy Hagar solo song, and it could probably rival a lot of Van Halen songs. To be honest, I really like that one. But Unboxed is the title of this album. It's yeah, it's an enjoyable listen. I Can't Drive 55 is a famous song off this one. Um, yeah, yeah, it's an interesting listen. And then I also have a greatest hits or best of. um, Rock and Roll Weekend is on here. Um, he does a cover of Otis Redding's Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting greatest hits album. It's not bad. I'm kind of surprised that I Can't Drive 55 is not on this best of, but whatever. Um, so that's my Sammy Hagar solo stuff, my David Lee Roth solo stuff. Um, and I just because I don't know when I'm going to talk about this band again on my channel, I wanted to show that I am a big fan of Gary Cherone. I have Extreme's first three albums. So here's their original self-titled album, came out kind of mid 80s, I think, 89, so late 80s. Their first self-titled album, just Extreme there. And their second album, Extreme 2, also known as Porno Graffiti, has an alternate title. Porno Graffiti is the album is called. And in most editions, you have, say, Porno Graffiti right on it. But you can also see in the logo they have Extreme and they have the number 2 next to it. It even says on the side Extreme 2. So, this is um, a pretty good album, I think. Wholehearted is a pretty good song. More Than Words is definitely the best song on the album. Um, yeah, really good stuff. And then Extreme's third album that came out kind of after the hair metal craze was over, so it didn't get a fair shake, and that's Extreme 3, um, also known as Three Sides to Every Story. Um, yeah, um, which the sides are um, Yours, Mine, and the Truth. As you can see on the back there, three sides to every story, yours, mine, and the truth. Um, and there's another subtitle under the third listing of songs there, um, called Everything Under the Sun. So under you, this is just really interesting the way the album is ranked out. You have the first 6 songs under yours, and then the next 3 under mine. Or no, sorry, the next or songs 7 through 11. So that's 5 songs under mine. Um, and the truth, everything under the sun has the last 3 songs of the album. So kind of cool way to lay the album out there for Extreme 3. Um, so Gary Sharon has some good stuff. I really enjoy his stuff. There's some really good tracks on Extreme 1 as well. Uh, Mother Don't Want to Go to School Today and is the one that really stands out to me. But there's a really cool album. And Extreme 2, I'll admit that I haven't really listened to Extreme 3 as much, so I don't know a lot of it, but the first two albums are really good. Um, so yeah, I showed my Van Halen side stuff with Extreme and Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth. You know, Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth had their solo stuff, and then of course my whole Van Halen collection. I am going to do a top four, a Mount Rushmore for Van Halen. I'm gonna pick Van Halen 1 to be on my Mount Rushmore. I'm probably gonna give it. Mm, it's close. Probably either second or third place. Let's go with second. We'll give it the silver medal. And women and children first. I'm gonna go ahead and give, let's say, the bronze medal to women and children first. And I'm gonna give spot number 4. So still making my Mount Rushmore here. My 4th spot is going to Diver Down. And my gold medal, first place, the very best of Van Halen. Like I said, there's a lot of strength even just in the one song Hot for Teacher, but it's also got some good stuff. And a lot of people, even though I think they're slightly overrated, a lot of people really love Jump and Panama, and they're good songs. I don't mean to dog on them like they're bad songs, but yeah, I definitely I'm put 1984 is my favorite Van Halen album. Um, so there you go. That's my Mount Rushmore of Van Halen. Um, so yeah. Um, Hope you guys enjoyed the video. God bless everybody. Dragonfire out.